Hello and welcome to Conversations with Carrie. I'm your host, Carrie Marie, from Mind Over Self Empowerment Coaching, and I'm here to uplift, inspire, and empower you to live your dreams. And today I'd like to discuss with you identity, because this is the core of our experiences. So we're going to be looking at why our identity is so important to understand, and why it drives and how it drives our lives. And we'll be looking into how we can start to change that identity and what's at the core of that. So our identity is essentially who we think we are. And in terms of how it affects our experience of the world, there's actually 5 other layers between identity and experience. So I'd like you to imagine that you've got a pyramid in front of you, and at the top of it is identity, and at the bottom of it is experience. And the next layer down from identity is perspective. That's our beliefs and our values about us, others, and how we see the world, and what we believe and value about the world. So I'll give you an example of something. So, for example, say that someone has a chair and it's rickety and it's making a lot of noise and it's kind of barely holding together. And they look at this thing and think, well, it's old, it's crappy, it's uncomfortable now, it's making a lot of noise, and it's making me, they're not enjoying it. And they're seeing it, and they're seeing this thing that's old, and they really value new things. They really value modern furnishings and things like that. So that they're looking at it and thinking, well, it just doesn't fit anymore. That doesn't fit with what their value, which is clean lines, wide. It's just not fitting. So they decide, okay, well, this isn't working for me, and they decide to throw it out. And someone else might see that chair and think, wow, what a beautiful chair. It just needs a bit of love. Now, our beliefs and values affect our perception, how we see things. So, for example, this person who is getting rid of the chair might see it and go, well, it's looking old, it's tatty, it doesn't fit with my nice modern look. And so they're seeing it, and they're seeing it as being something ugly and as something that doesn't fit. Whereas when they've got rid of it and someone else sees that chair, they might think, well, this is beautiful. It's made of native New Zealand timbers. I can polish that up. I can wax it up. I can fix the legs on it. And it will make a beautiful addition to my home, which is all rustic. So the same chair, but just being seen in 2 different ways. The person who's getting rid of the chair, after they've sensed through their eyes that it doesn't fit in their home, and they're not enjoying the way it feels or the way it sounds because it's making a noise and it's creaking as they're sitting on it. What they're thinking about, what they're focusing on, is what's wrong, how it doesn't fit in the home, how it's uncomfortable. They're thinking about all the things that are wrong with the chair, versus the other person who saw that same chair and was like, they were seeing the potential of it. They were seeing how it would look so beautiful in their home, just with a bit of work. What they're attending to affects the meaning they place on it. So, for instance, the first example, they're seeing the chair and they're making it mean, I don't want this anymore. The other person is making it mean, I have a project, it's going to look beautiful, and I'm going to really enjoy this chair. In addition, actually, I want to add another thing to the first guy or first person who originally had the old chair. They may also be making it mean, oh, it's time to have something new. They might actually be like, well, yeah, I don't want this anymore. I'm ready for something new. So what the meaning that we give something will affect our emotions. So person who was the original owner of this rickety old chair may first of all be experiencing frustration because it's not comfortable, they're not liking the sound of the creaking, they don't like the way it looks. But on the other side of that, they might also be feeling excited because getting rid of this thing means that they can have something new that will fit better with their furnishings. And equally, the person who is seeing the same chair that's been thrown out might be looking at that and feeling really excited because they can see themselves working on it. They can see themselves bringing out the beauty of this old chair and giving it a new purpose, a new lease of life in their home where it will fit beautifully. And as a result of the emotions that they're placing on the meanings and the thoughts and how they sensed this object and the beliefs and values that they hold, they're experiencing that chair in two different ways. So the first person will be experiencing it from the lens of discomfort, unpleasantness, of let me get rid of this initially. And before perhaps feeling the excitement of, okay, I can have something new now. Versus the other person who's like, okay, same chair, sitting on it and seeing the possibilities and feeling the excitement around that. So the excitement around seeing the possibilities gives them a different experience of the same object. I hope that I'm making that clear to you. And that difference in experience comes down to their identity, who they think they are. Because that shaped their beliefs, their values, how they sense the world, what they think about, what they focus on, what they're making those thoughts mean about themselves, others, and the world, how they feel about that meaning, and ultimately how they're experiencing that, in this case, chair. But it could be any situation, any thought, any event that happens in our lives. It explains so much about why one person who gets paralyzed, breaks their back, can be in bed and smiling about it, versus one who can be miserable and my life is over and down about it. I mean, not to say that having a broken back is not a big deal. It is. But it explains why two people can experience a similar thing and have a totally different experience. It explains why there are some people like Joe Dispenza, for instance, who had an accident many years ago, which left them potentially paralyzed, that he spent the time lying in bed focusing on healing his back. And he did it. And it explains why some people will lie there and not do anything. And it comes down to what we believe is possible and what our values are. And ultimately that comes down to who we think we are. Now, I want to offer you this quote, a couple of quotes actually. This is from the new Psycho-Cybernetics book by Maxwell Multz, who was a plastic surgeon back in the 60s. So at the pioneering end of that work, transforming people's appearances, which is phenomenal work. And what he shares is that understanding the psychology of the self, of our identity, can mean the difference between success and failure, love and hate, bitterness and happiness. The discovery of real self can rescue a crumbling marriage, recreate a faltering career, transform victims of personality failure. On another plane, discovering your real self means the difference between freedom and the compulsions of conformity. And he says that our self-image then, and as we've discussed this already, controls what you can and cannot accomplish, what is difficult or easy for you, even how others respond to you, just as certainly and scientifically as a thermostat controls the temperature in your home. And specifically, all your actions, feelings, behavior, even your abilities are always consistent with the self-image. And always is really key here, because if you believe you are a certain type of person, you will act like it. If you believe that you're average in sport, you'll be average in sport. If you believe you're an average salesperson, you'll be an average salesperson. If you believe that you're the kind of person who gets really overwhelmed over tiny things, you will be a person who gets overwhelmed by the tiniest things. If you believe that you can't reach your dreams, then you won't reach your dreams. If you believe that you can't heal, you won't heal. This is fact. Who we believe we are, we become. So we have to change our self-image. And he gives this example, actually. Now, I want to read this to you as well. This book is really quite amazing. So he talks about the snapback effect. He says, the person who has a fat self-image, whose self-image claims to have a sweet tooth, to be unable to resist junk food, who cannot find time to exercise, will be unable to lose weight and keep it off no matter what he tries to do consciously in opposition to that self-image. You cannot long outperform or escape your self-image. If you do escape briefly, you'll be snapped back, like a rubber band extended between two fingers coming loose from one end. The person who perceives himself as a failure type person will find some way to fail in spite of all his good intentions or his willpower, even if opportunity is literally dumped in his lap. The person who conceives himself to be a victim of injustice, one who was meant to suffer, will invariably find circumstances to verify his opinions. I trust that you can really see the power of this. That how our self-image really limits us to what we can achieve. So the key to this is changing our identity. So what exactly is our identity? Well, for a start, and I've showed those a few examples there. One of the common things is what they're associating with themselves, the labels they're placing on themselves. The fat person, the failure person, the victim. They're labels. And we have other labels. For instance, if we've ever been diagnosed with a health condition, whether it be mental or physical, that's a label. There's the roles that we play in our lives, whether we're a son or a daughter, a brother, a sister, a mother, a father, a wife, a husband, a girlfriend, boyfriend, friend. Whether we are an employee or an employer, an entrepreneur, the actual job role that we play, the kind of employer or entrepreneur that we are, the kind of, within all that, there's also student. If we're a student, what kind of student are we? If we're a sports person, what kind of sports person are we? So within the roles, there's also levels, right? So we can be identifying ourselves not just on the roles, but how well we play those roles. We might be labeling ourselves based on our achievements, on what we do, on what we've done. can get very tempting to be our accolades. I won first place. I'm at this. I'm at that. I've got a certification in such and such. And I'll admit, I've done that. I've got a wall full of certificates to show that I've got certificates and can do various things. But I'm not what I can do. Just as you're not what you can do. You're so much more than that. And it's an interesting, powerful question to really get to the bottom of. Who are we? If we're not our labels, who are we? And this was an examination question given to Dr. Wayne Dyer when he was studying philosophy. And his professor came in on this open book exam and gave the question of, who are you? And just as literally every student in the room was about to write their biography, he comes in and says, well, actually, you can't talk about your roles. You can't talk about your accolades, your achievements. He gave them a whole list of things that they couldn't talk about. And once he'd left the room, they were all kind of scratching their heads going, okay, well, if I'm not any of these things, who am I? Really? So who are you? When you're not all of these things that we've associated with, what's underneath all that? And the key to this is understanding, for me, speaking from my own experience, for me, one of the keys to this is understanding that I'm not the body. I'm not my mind. I'm not what I think. I'm not this body. And if I'm neither of those things, then what am I? Then you go to the spiritual side and it's like, okay, so I'm a soul that has a body, that has a mind. But then what is a soul? A soul is consciousness. It's a spark of consciousness. So what is consciousness? I can see I'm getting a bit esoteric on this, but it's an important question to ask. Because a soul is unlimited. And a soul is pure love. And it can do anything. But we've forgotten that we are souls. We've forgotten our creativity, our passions, our purpose. And these are the qualities that really make up who we are, in my opinion. And this is opinion. Because when we're not fearful, when we're not living with limitation, what are we? We're confident, we're courageous, we take risks when we perhaps wouldn't otherwise. If you think about a child that hasn't been programmed and conditioned to think of themselves in a certain way, they're bold, they're resilient, they're playful and curious, they're loving, they have fun, they're creative. And through that we actually can see what our true self is really like. And the key here with a child is that it's all about being present. It's all about being in the moment. They aren't thinking about tomorrow or yesterday. They're only going with, okay, what do I want to do now? Can I do it? Nope. Like, for instance, I'm thinking of a story where someone was sharing that they had a baby and that they were watching the baby turn over, try and roll itself over, and it's kind of like trying and failing miserably because it doesn't have the strength yet. But does it stop? No. It just keeps testing and trying and giving it a go until it can do it on its own. And the next step is crawling, and the next step after that is walking, and each stage takes a while to build up the muscle and the coordination to be able to make all of it happen so that they can walk without thinking. And then before you know it, they're running circles around you. So how do we change our identity to be more like that? Well, the key, when we can actually literally change our identity. It's not, we think our identity is permanent. It's not. It's habitual. We've heard something, we've experienced something, and so we rely on the past to determine, okay, well, this is obviously who I am. This is my experience. This is what it has to be. And I want to point out that that's not the case. So our identity, who we're showing up as, is a habit that we're just repeating because we're expecting a certain experience. We're just repeating the behaviors that will get us there, right from the beliefs down to the perception, focus, thought, meaning, emotions, experience. So we can start from becoming aware of our experience. We can actually work backwards because we probably aren't aware of who we think we're being, of who we think we're showing up as in the world. We may not realize that we are thinking of ourselves as an average self person, unless you have a leaderboard that you're perhaps looking at every day and seeing yourself constantly on the average, in the middle of everyone, unless you're actually looking at where you are in comparison to others. Because our external environment reveals who we think we are. It reveals our beliefs. It reveals what we're thinking about the world. So start with what you're experiencing. What do you notice about your home? What do you notice about your work? What do you notice about the way people interact with you? What do you notice about the way that you're feeling? What do you notice about the meanings that you place on things? Do you notice that other people see the same thing and put a different meaning on it? What would it be like for you if you put that meaning on there instead? Assuming it's a positive one. They don't think you need to be taking on more negative meanings, but if someone's placing a positive meaning that you didn't see before, what if there could be value in that meaning that they're placing on it? How would that make life different for you? How are you judging the world? So, for instance, bad or good. Because when we get beyond duality, there is no good, there is no bad, there is no right, there is no wrong. There is simply what is happening in this current moment. Nothing has meaning until we place meaning upon it. So how else could you see something that you're sensing? How else could you think about it? What other meaning could you assign it? Is it really good? Is it really bad? And finally, of course, there's our beliefs and our values. What are you valuing? What are you believing that is affecting your perception of whether something is good or bad? Whether something is pleasant, unpleasant. Whether it's something you want or don't want. Do you know what your values are? If you don't, this is a good time to start thinking about that. Because our values literally drive everything else. And our beliefs as well. Like if you believe that the world isn't a safe place, well, you will look for evidence that it's not safe, and you will be looking for, okay, what's dangerous? First, if you think the world is a safe place, you'll be looking for evidence of that. If you believe that you are lovable, you will look for evidence that you are loved. If you believe that you're not lovable, you will look for evidence that you're not, where you're not receiving love. And I trust that you can see how these different beliefs and different values would affect the way you experience the world. So, we have to change. We want our external world to change. We have to change from the inside. We cannot do it from changing the outside in. It doesn't work. You can't make the world a safer place if you're constantly looking for what's not safe. The way to make the world a safer place or feel safer is start to believe that the world is safe and start looking for evidence that supports that. And so you can play games. You could actually do the what if game. What if actually the world was a safe place? What would I look for that would make me believe that? How would I know that it's a safe place? And it might be simple things like it feels safe when you're sitting on your couch. You feel comfortable. You've got heat and it's warm. That you can go outside and there's no one shouting at you or threatening violence or that kind of thing. That's safe. And I appreciate that some people live in violent households. So if that's you and you're listening to this, I don't want to minimize your experience at all. And I understand that some people really don't live in a safe environment. So it's not to minimize your experience or to say that you're not living in a safe environment. If you are living in an unsafe environment, then I'll suggest that you get yourself out. But look at why it is that you are in that environment. What is it that you're believing about yourself that you're having that experience? And know that you can change it. And this is really important. So, this isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about looking at something and saying, for instance, say you don't have a job right now and you're going, I will get that job, and affirming that you'll get it. It's not about that. This is about actually applying positive thoughts not to external situations, but to yourself. It's really about changing your internal experience, your internal thoughts, understanding that this is not fixed, that it absolutely can be changed. And I want to reinforce this actually, and this in the Maxwell Multz's book, he shares about some students. And he said that, let me actually read this to you. I think this will be the best thing for me to do. So he talks about some experiments that have been done to show how when people's self-concept and idea changed, their worlds literally changed. So he shares this. One of the earliest and most convincing experiments along this line, along the line of changing the self-concept, was conducted by the late Prescott Leckey, one of the pioneers in self-image psychology. Leckey conceived of the personality as a system of ideas, all of which must be consistent with each other. Ideas that are inconsistent with the system are rejected, not believed, and not acted on. Ideas that seem to be consistent with the system are accepted. At the very center of the system of ideas, the keystone or the base on which all else is built, is the individual self-image or his conception of himself. Leckey was a school teacher and had an opportunity to test his theory on thousands of students. He theorized that if a student had trouble learning a certain subject, it could be because, from the student's point of view, it would be inconsistent for him to learn it. Leckey believed, however, that if the student could be induced to change his self-definition, his learning ability should also change. This proved to be the case. One student, who misspelled 55 words out of 100 and flunked so many subjects that he lost credit for a year, made a general average of 91 the next year and became one of the best spellers in school. A girl who was dropped from one college because of poor grades entered Columbia and became a straight-A student. A boy who was told by a testing bureau that he had no aptitude for English won honorable mention the next year for a literary prize. The trouble with these students was not that they were dumb or lacking in basic aptitudes. The trouble was an inadequate self-image. I don't have a mathematical mind. I'm just naturally a poor speller. They identified with their mistakes and failures. Instead of saying, I failed that test, factual and descriptive, they concluded, I am a failure. Instead of saying, I flunked that subject, they said, I am a flunk-out. For those who are interested in learning more of Leckey's work, try to find a copy of his book, Self-Consistency, A Theory of Personality. And Leckey apparently also used the same method to cure students of such habits as nail-biting and stuttering. And he says that his own files contain case histories just as convincing. The woman who was so afraid of strangers that she seldom ventured out of the house and who now makes a living as a public speaker. The salesman who had already prepared a letter of resignation because he just wasn't cut out for selling, and 6 months later was #1 man on a force of 100 salespeople. The minister who was considered retirement because nerves and the pressure of preparing a sermon every week were getting him down, and who now delivers an average of 3 outside talks a week in addition to his weekly sermons and doesn't know he has a nerve in his body. Following Dr. Leckey's breakthrough thinking on this subject, born from observation as well as my own observations and thoughts, chronicled in the early editions of this book, a mountain of more sophisticated scientific research and anecdotal evidence has led to the acceptance of the controlling self-image by most of the academic psychological community. Wow. I wonder if you can identify with some of those thoughts, those beliefs. What would it mean for you if you could change that? if you could change beliefs about your experience. So it's all about self-esteem. This is what it all comes down to, really, is becoming mindful, like I was saying, about your experience, changing things. I mean, if you become aware of an experience, you can become eventually aware of your beliefs and values, which will then lead you to your identity. You can delve straight into your beliefs and values. There's powerful work you can do. I'm almost a bit wary of talking about what I do on these podcasts because I don't want to make it all about me. But there's powerful techniques out there, for example, NLP, and that's something that I've trained in, that can really help to shift beliefs and values around, can really change behavior and help people to start taking action on things that they never thought they would or could. And these particular techniques, they get into the subconscious workings of the mind and work at that root level, which is really powerful because you are making changes at the subconscious level, what the identity is and what it can achieve and accomplish. You can, like I say, you can do it consciously as well. It's all about being present in the moment to give yourself more choices about how to behave and actually contemplating about, well, if I was confident, how would I behave? You can even think about it in this way and even come up with scenarios that you've had in the past and think about, well, actually, if I showed up the way I want to show up, how would that look? Do I have role models in my life who have showed up in the way that I would like to show up? What did they do? What did they say? How did they behave? So it takes a bit of observation. It takes longer to do it this way, but you can do it. You can do it. It's all about spending that time. And if you're interested in the book that I'm sharing here, it's The New Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Multz. The original science of self-improvement and success that has changed the lives of 30 million people. So, very interesting book. And he does share in there about how to change beliefs, how to live more courageously, and how you can acquire the habit of happiness, and how to give yourself an emotional facelift and instantly feel and look 10 years younger. Freeing yourself from inhibition and giving yourself peace of mind as well. So, if you're interested in that book, that's what it is. Highly recommend it. It's a great book. If you have any questions around identity, if you'd like to know more about NLP and some of the techniques that involves, let me know. I'll leave you my contact details in the description. And also, if you're interested because I mentioned about thoughts, or how our thoughts affect the meanings and our emotions and our experience. If you want to work on that level to begin with, because the lower in the pyramid, the level, like experiences at the bottom, right, the easier it is for us to change it. So it's easier for us to change our perception of an experience. Like we have an experience of something, it's easier for us to look at, okay, well, how am I feeling about this? And then look at the meaning than it is for us to change our identity straight off the bat. Okay, so it's easier to at least become mindful of the present moment than it is to start at the identity level. However, that said, I'm at the moment releasing a report. Well, it's not a report, it's a profiling tool which actually helps you to discover how you think. So it doesn't cover your behavior, although your behavior results from your thoughts. But what it does, so it gets beyond the behavior into, okay, the thinking that causes your behaviors and your experience in the world. So if that interests you, it looks at basically 4 archetypes that work at different levels of our thinking. So whether we're thinking in terms of big picture around our why we're doing stuff, whether we're looking at the what is happening, what needs to be done, or whether we're working on the how, the implementation of stuff, or whether we're looking at the who and how we collaborate with people. So some of us are naturally good at connecting with people. You may already, as I'm sharing these archetypes with you, go, I think I'm these things. What the profile does, it lets you see your strengths and weaknesses in each area. And it can help you identify where perhaps you're really lacking. And when you bring balance to that, it can help you with creating new meanings for what you're bringing to the table in your experiences. So if that's something that interests you, it's something that I'm exploring right now. I haven't done too many of those, so I'm offering complimentary sessions. So if you'd like to come and explore with me, you are more than welcome to, and I will share the link in the chat box below, and those are in the description below. So I look forward to seeing you there. Have a fabulous day wherever you are in the world. And of course, if you would like to join the community, I will post that link in the description as well. It is facebook.com/groups/empowering you book club. We're no longer exploring books, but it's still all about empowering you to live your dream. So I look forward to connecting with you and seeing you there if you'd like to be in a community of people who are of like mind and are ready to shift their identity and change their experience of their world. So look forward to seeing you there, and bye for now.